Namaskar, good evening, hello. This is Preeti Chaudhary here on another episode of LinkedIn Local India Live. Today is a Friday, which is a fun day. Yet we do part fun, part business on a Friday as well. So, with this, let me introduce the topic and the host and the guest for today, and I will see you shortly on the other side of this episode. So, today it is all about crisis management, it is all about agility in leadership, it is all about how you correlate sports and leadership styles in a crisis situation. None other than our dear friend Singh Sheikhawat, who has the knowledge and the experience, the guts and the gumption to talk about this, shooting straight from the hip, as honest and as authentic as one can get. Lots and lots of insight and amazing stuff from him. And today, your host will be Colonel Amit Verma, and I, Preeti Chaudhary, will be supporting these gentlemen on the side. So, with that, once again, a very warm welcome to everybody on this episode of LinkedIn Local India Live Community Connect with Amit Verma hosting and our dear friend Samar Singh Sheikhawat as our guest. Let's bring them into the stream and say our hellos. Here we are, Samar. Good evening, Samar.
Good evening, Preeti.
And
Thank you for the opportunity.
hi. All right, guys, it's over to you. I will be in the back end supporting you guys. Just call out for me and I'll be right there for you. With that, over to you, Amit. Let's get the evening rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti. It's been an exciting evening so far. I tried three different browsers before I could give LinkedIn Live a go. And Preeti has been there very patiently holding the fort. And Summer, with his coolness, he is Mr. Cool. Even though we have a Dhoni who retired, we have Summer who's not going to retire.
See the mug
Summer,
that I'm having.
see, great minds think alike. And that's an amazing song by Boney M also.
That's right.
Summer is a business consultant. He is an advisor to startups. He is on the board of many prestigious institutions. He is a thought leader. He is also a professional public speaker, but more than anything that I have said about him so far, he is a sports aficionado who knows sportsmen, who knows what it to be a sportsman because he has been active throughout his life. Even now, when he talks to me, he would be either coming from a run or going from a run or going for a run or remaining fit. He doesn't look whatever age he is. I will not ask him how old he is, but damn, I want to be as fit when I'm as old as him. That's one thing I have. And like I told Samar earlier, he exudes the personality of an army person, an armed forces officer. And I think that's in his blood, Samar. Would that be correct?
Yes, 3 generations in the armed forces. My haircut also, I look like an armed forces officer at the moment.
And that is what the discussion today is all about. We have COVID-19, which came in March, at least to our country, and it has thrown everything out of the window. The baby, the bath water, everything, and even the bathtub, and even the kitchen sink. And we are having to rework how is it that we will get on in the later part of 2020 and how different is 2021 going to be. If we don't have the right mindset, if we don't have the right tools, we will be caught out short. And that we will not let it happen. And Sama is here to share with us his viewpoint on how to get ahead in times of crisis, how to manage like a sportsman on the field, because not every plan goes the way you want it to. You will get a curveball, you will get a bouncer, you will get bumped on your head, your helmet will come off. But still, how do you knock that ball out of the park for a six? That's what we're here to discuss with Summer. And let's get on with it straight away. Summer, your views on this, please.
Thank you. Amit, if you were born in 1900, at the age of 14, World War One would have broken out. From 1914 to 1918, World War One broke out. 22 million people dead.
Okay.
1918 to 1920, the Spanish flu hit the world. 50 million people dead. 1929 to 1939. So by the time you're 29 years old, the Great Depression hits. 15 million unemployed, 20,000 American businesses shut down. Another 5 million people died because of poverty. 1939, when you're approaching middle age, if you were born in 1900, 1939 to 1945, the Second World War, 60 million dead. 1952, the Korean War. 1964 to 75, the Vietnam War. We are living actually in the most peaceful time in this planet's existence in the last 100 years, and people don't believe that. If I look at my own life, you didn't want to know how old I am. I'm 55 and a half. I was born in 1965, and the moment I was born, India went to war with Pakistan in 65. You would remember that. We went to war with Pakistan again in 1971. In 1984, I fractured my wrist playing football. In 1985, I was shot through my hand with a .22 rifle in a shooting accident in Assam. The bullet went through and through. Part of my nerve was shot away. In 1991, the Gulf War happened. In 1995, I lost my job. How we believe computer systems were shut down across the world. In 2001, there was the Afghanistan war. In 2001 and 2, there was the dot-com bubble burst. Suicide, 3 of my friends killed themselves. In 2007 and 8, there was the banking crisis, the global banking financial collapse. In 2008, I had a supralateral meniscus, a slap tear on my shoulder. I went in for surgery. I have a titanium screw. I had 6 months in physiotherapy, after which started working out at the gym. In 2011, I fractured my chest playing rugby at the Bombay Gymkhana Club when Atul Vasan and Chetan Hansraj decided to squash me between the two of them. Now, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'1", but those guys are 6'4" each. The point is, despite all this, I'm still here. I'm sure all of you have similar stories. I can think of many ailments as well. Growing up, Amit, we got measles, we got mumps, I got malaria, I got typhoid, we got German measles, I got every possible ailment, I got chicken pox. And even today, we have HIV in the world, we have AIDS, we have SARS, which is a severe acute respiratory syndrome. We have MERS, we have Zika, we have Nipah, we have Ebola. All these are still there. Every year, 1.4 million people die of tuberculosis in this country. We have 900,000 antenatal and neonatal deaths. Another 500,000 die because of cholera, malaria, and typhoid. Road accidents, we have 500,000 road accidents, 150,000 people die in road accidents. Every day, ladies and gentlemen, 30,000 people die in this country. Now, I'm not starting off on a negative note to get people depressed, but let us really look at what are the challenges that we are facing in this so-called COVID pandemic. I'll tell you what the challenges are. We are having to stay at home. That's our single biggest challenge. We have to wear masks when we step out. Yes, there is a little bit of distinction and separation from human beings, but we have food, we have electricity, we have running water, we have air conditioners, we have Wi-Fi, we have Netflix, we have our mobile phones. None of these enablers existed in all these incidents that I've mentioned in the past. Yet, human beings and humanity survived. We never lost the joy of living. Yes, I understand. There is a struggle today. There are lockdowns. There is mental stress. There is little or no human contact. You have Wi-Fi issues and the whole getting stuck inside your own home, but that's about it. Some of you may have lost your job. Some of you may have not got that promotion. Some of you may have had salary cuts, but we're alive. I accept that there is no precedent to the scale of this pandemic. Never before in the history of the planet have 200 plus countries been affected or afflicted by the same condition. I accept that. I also accept that there's a little bit of uncertainty on when the journey will end. There is no definite end in sight. Despite what Vladimir Putin says about Russia being the first to develop Sputnik 5, which is the alleged vaccine for COVID, all of us would agree that a vaccine is certainly not happening. They say it will perhaps happen next year. But you know what I want to say? Be grateful and thankful that you're alive. It could be much worse, as I have mentioned to you in all the incidents that have happened in our recent history. Protect yourself, protect your friends and family. There are many others far less fortunate than ourselves. Domestic help, for instance. I know people who have stopped paying their domestic help. That is pathetic. Look at the problem of migrants. They are far worse off than we are. And really speaking, what I want to ask people on the call, what is your work? What is your worry? Is it only work? Who says that work is everything? You know, one of my favorite sayings, Amit, is nobody on his deathbed ever said we should have spent more time in the office. Nobody says that. They always say I should have done all the things that I didn't do. Right? The main issue is, are you able to live with yourself? A lot of our problems arise from the fact that we're not able to live with ourselves. I mean, Nelson Mandela went to prison for 27 years. When he was being sworn in as president, he invited his jailers and the wardens and everyone who put him into jail, into prison. And when F.W. de Klerk, with whom he shared the Nobel Peace Prize, asked him, why did you do that? He said, if I didn't invite them to my swearing in ceremony, I'm still in prison. I haven't left my hatred behind. And what an amazing attitude. So, are you able to live with yourself, or do you seek constant validation and security through the approval of others? Perhaps on social media, because on social media, everyone is cooler than they are in real life. We need to have patience. We need to have optimism. Remember, Indians by nature are amongst the most optimistic people on the planet. We believe that tomorrow will be better than today, and today is better than yesterday. Kal hamesha sunhera hota hai. So that inherent optimism will help us. Focus on yourself. Put your hand on your heart and say, how many of us have focused on ourselves? What have you done during this lockdown? How have you utilized the time? Have you learned a new skill? Why don't you learn a new musical instrument? Why don't you learn a new language? Online courses and YouTube is there to teach you all of this. Why don't you maybe take up baking, maybe cooking, maybe gardening? How about reading more than you've ever read before? How about writing on subjects that are close to your heart? What about meditation? Listen to music. Get rid of old stuff. I am not putting the camera down here, otherwise my guest bedroom bed is covered with old clothes. I was telling Preeti a little earlier, where my wife and daughter have decided to get rid of tons and tons of old stuff and hopefully give it to people less fortunate than ourselves. Clean up and re-evaluate your life. Exercise, very important. As Amit will tell you, all this fancy gym equipment, etc., that we're used to, we never needed any of this growing up. You can do your push-ups, your pull-ups, your running, your floor exercises. You don't need any equipment, trust me. How about exercising? How about walking? How about connecting with friends and family? Call up your parents, call up your relatives, call up the people that you went to school and college with. Most importantly, recognize that there are other people who perhaps may not be doing as well as you. Reach out and help them. Understand that mental depression and mental illness is as real and as deleterious as physical depression and a physical ailment. If you are suffering from that, if you believe you are feeling the walls closing in and you have no end in sight, seek help. Reach out. I don't want to sound presumptuous and say I will help all of you, but I am fielding 20 calls a day. I know that Amit, despite holding a full-time job, gets about 10 counseling calls every day, and on the weekends even more. I know Preeti is doing that. I'm sure a lot of you are doing that. Seek help if needed. Chat and connect with your loved ones. Most importantly, Amit, survive. If you didn't do any of this, you didn't learn a new skill, you didn't exercise, you didn't read, you didn't write, you just survived. Even that is good enough. Because this too shall pass. That is my philosophy for life. The day a vaccine is found, if you read Stephen Schwarzman, who's the founder of Blackstone, his interview today, he's saying that he expects things at worst to get over in 2 years from now, or 2 years from when the pandemic started, which is, let's say, 1.5 years from now. Now, I don't know. But the day a vaccine is found, this too shall pass. And in fact, the economy has already started picking up. I know friends of mine who are already going out. Yes, they're not doing it at the frequency and the scale that they were doing earlier, but life finds a way. If you're a Jurassic Park fan, they always say in the movies, life will find a way. So survive, and this too shall pass. Abraham tells me explore high intensity interval training videos I've started during the lockdown. Excellent. Very, very good. Uh, since Amit mentioned talking about sports stories, I think some of the qualities that we need to inculcate to survive are the number one quality is courage. I remember in 1989, a 16-year-old Indian making his Test debut for India against Pakistan, facing Wasim Akram and Waqar Yunus, the two most feared Pakistani pace bowlers in the world, bowling at 90 miles an hour. India was 37 for 5, and in walks Sachin Tendulkar. And I think the fourth ball of Waqar Yunus was over, hit him on the face, and he collapsed on the ground. And there was blood all over his jersey and on the pitch. And Navjot Sidhu was the non-striker. I think Azharuddin was the captain. Navjot Sidhu turned around and looked at Azharuddin and said, "Shall we walk off?" And he started walking off, and from behind he heard a pipsqueak voice, "Main khelega." And he turned around and he saw that Sachin has stood up and he's ready to bat again. Now, on that day, Sachin scored about 40 runs, but he held fort for a couple of hours. And when he was changing his jersey in the dressing room, this 16-year-old boy had black and blue marks all over his body where the ball had hit him. Imagine a 16-year-old boy making his debut against the two fiercest fast bowlers in the world. If he can do it, you can do it. Courage is the first quality. The second one is resilience. And I would like to tell you the story of Marwan Attapattu, the famous Sri Lankan cricketer, who, after scoring tons of runs in domestic cricket, was selected to play for Sri Lanka. And in his first test, he scored 0 and 1. And he was dropped from the Sri Lankan cricket team for 4 years. He went back to domestic cricket, scored tons of runs again, and was once again selected to play for Sri Lanka. And again, in his second test, he scored 0 and 0. And he was dropped a second time. He went back to domestic cricket again, scored tons of runs in domestic cricket, and was selected to play for Sri Lanka a third time. And again, in his third test, he scored 0 and 0. Now imagine, he's been waiting for 8 years to score his second run in Test cricket. Imagine the number of times, ladies and gentlemen, he must have thought that maybe I'm just not good enough to survive at the international level. Maybe my future is written only at the domestic level. But full credit to the Sri Lankan team, cricket board, they selected him a fourth time. And this time he did not disappoint. He scored 5 double centuries, 16 centuries, 6,000 test runs, went on to captain Sri Lanka, and was one of the most loved and respected players that Sri Lanka has ever had. So whenever you're down, whenever you're feeling defeated, think about the story of Marwan Attapattu. Or think about that legendary test, India versus Australia in Calcutta in 2000, when Australia scored some 450 something else, and we were all out for 180 or so. We were trailing by 250 runs. And I've just finished reading Shane Warne's autobiography. I've read this in Steve Waugh's autobiography, which, by the way, I would highly recommend. It's called Out of My Comfort Zone. And Shane Warne's autobiography, the latest one, is called No Spin. And I've read this story in VVS Lakshman's book. I've read it in Rahul Dravid's book. I've read it and I've heard the story from everyone. So Australia scored about 450 runs in their first test. India scored 180, 190. We were about 250 runs behind. And Steve Waugh decided to enforce the follow-on. Shane Warne said, let's not enforce the follow-on, let's bat once again so that we make sure that we cannot lose the test. But Steve Waugh said, no, we will follow on. Shane Warne said, we are tired, let us rest, let us bat. Steve Waugh said, no, I'm enforcing the follow-on. And the rest, as they say, is history, because India went on to score 700 odd runs. VVS Lakshman scored 281 not out, which has been rated the greatest test innings ever played by an Indian. Rahul Dravid scored 183 or something before he was run out. Together they put on some 450 runs. Not only did they surpass the lead, but they gave Australia a target of some 400 runs to win. And if you read VVS Lakshman's autobiography, he has devoted 30 pages to this innings in terms of how he paced himself, how they were battling cramps, how they were battling dehydration and concentration for long periods of time. Anyway, we put Australia into bat, and Harbhajan Singh took some 6 or 7 wickets, and we won the test from an impossible position. So whenever you're depressed, think about Marwan Attapattu, think about Rahul Dravid and VVS Lakshman in the Calcutta 2000 test. Please stay motivated. They say there are two tragedies in life. One is to have your heart's desire. The other one is not to have it. Staying motivated is extremely important. I met Stephanie Rice, quadruple Olympic gold medalist and swimming champion, who at the age of 19 had 4 Olympic gold medals. And she felt that her life was over because her entire life's dreams and ambitions were over. At the age of 19, when a person is just starting out in life, she feels my life is over. So I asked her, what did you do? So she says, I went to Michael. And by Michael, I mean Michael Phelps. If you have to ask me the surname, then you don't know who I'm talking about. So she went to Michael Phelps and she asked him what I thought was a brilliant question. She said, Michael, how do I win when I've already won? Which is so amazing. How do I keep winning? Unfortunately, our conversation got interrupted, so I don't know what Michael said to her. But that's the thing. She came back later on and said, he just told me to focus on the next Olympics and the next World Championship and the next goal. So you need to stay motivated. You need to continuously set your new goals for yourself. If you have time, look at Matthew McConaughey's Oscar acceptance speech where he won the Best Actor for Dallas Buyers Club. And when they asked him, who's your hero? He said, my hero is me, myself, 10 years from now. So at 25, my hero is me at 35. And when I reach 35, someone asked me, have you become your hero? He says, not even close, because my hero is me at 45. And at 45, he said, it's me, I'm my hero at 55. That's a great person to chase. You chase only yourself. Spend time in self-improvement. The next quality is self-improvement. I'm going to keep this short and finish up in the next 10 minutes because we'd love to spend some time on questions. Self-improvement is very, very important. And I'll tell you the story of two stories. One is the story of Alistair Cook, who retired from Test cricket, I think last year, the 6'5" Greek god, Hollywood looks opening batsman and former Test captain of the English cricket team, who said, I don't think I was the most talented cricketer on the field, but I do believe that I became the best version of myself. Now, these words are very important. Try and become the best version of yourself. Software releases, the new software release, a new iPhone releases. In a similar fashion, there should be no human being released. Become the best version of yourself. Personally, I believe Alistair Cook was being humble because you can't have talent. You cannot have talent and score 10,000 test runs in 26 centuries. But he just said, I do believe I became the best version of myself. The second story is of David Rudisha. David Rudisha is a double 800-meter Olympic champion. He won gold in the 2008 Beijing Games and he won gold in the 2012 London Games. And in those 4 years, he improved his 100-meter timing by 4 seconds. That's 800-meter timing, 4-second improvement. That's almost unheard of. And when I asked him, I said, David, why did you push yourself so hard? You had already won gold at the previous Olympics. You were the favorite at the next Olympic. So he said, very simple, if I continued to perform at the level that I had performed in the previous Olympics, I would have come last. And that's exactly what happened. The person who came last in the London 2012 Olympics ran a time that would have given him gold in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. So constant self-improvement, despite being number one in the world, people like Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic are the hardest working tennis players on the planet, which is why today Roger just turned 39. Nadal is about 33, 34. Djokovic is 31, 32. Even today, the younger kids who are 18, 19, 20 cannot come anywhere close to them. They simply don't work that hard enough. Very importantly, and especially during COVID, learning how to lose is very important because you will lose. You will lose more often than you will win. And I'd like to tell the story of Anthony Irwin, which is one of my favorite sports stories. Anthony Irwin, at the age of 19 in the Sydney Olympics, won the 50-meter sprint gold in the swimming event. And he lost all motivation, gave up competitive swimming for 9 years. and comes back in the 2016 Sydney Olympics as a 35-year-old man, wins the same event in a timing that was faster than when he was 19 years old. It's an almost inhuman feat to even think of. So there was this German autobiography writer who was hanging around him, and she was saying, I want to write your autobiography. And when I asked Tony, he said, I think that's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my life. And I said, why do you feel so? And he said, what will anyone write about me that I won when I was 19 and I'm winning when I'm 35? He says, in my entire life, I have only won. I have never lost. He says, what can I teach anyone? And these are his exact words. Until I've had the privilege of losing. He says, losing is a privilege that is afforded to very few. Defeat teaches you much more than victory. I mean, Colonel Amit is not allowed to tell about all the action that he saw in Jammu and Kashmir. But I can guarantee you that if there were a skirmish that we lost, that would have taught us much more than victory, because we tend to analyze defeat much more closely than we analyze victory, right? So learning how to lose is very important, and accepting that the loss has nothing to do with your sense of self-worth. Because as Indians and usually as Asians, we marry victory and defeat very closely with our sense of self-worth. As they say in chess, victory and defeat, treat both these imposters equally. Don't let either of them take over you. Help those less fortunate than you. Already talked about it. This economic situation will improve eventually. You just need to hang in there. An old saying that one boss of mine used to say, steel is made when it passes through fire. There is a funny saying that says that death and divorce bring out the best and the worst in people. I think you can safely add COVID to that. Death, divorce, and COVID has brought out the best and the worst in people. We have seen the best of behavior. We have seen the worst of behavior. To finish, I would say to take a quote from our Prime Minister, be self-reliant, be Atmanirbhar. Pardon my saying so, do not depend on the government. They will not do anything for you. You have to make sure that you stay safe, you stay healthy, you stay positive, you stay optimistic, you learn something new, help people less fortunate than you. This situation will eventually end, and promise yourself that when this ends, you will come out better than you went in. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, sir. And I think this particular part where you spoke is going to be watched by many, many more people. We have a sizable number of them with us right now. Thank you, Pranav. Thank you, Utpal. We had the comment which came in from Abraham, sir, also. Uh, Utpal has written, would be more of accepting defeat with grace, learning from it, and moving on to be a better version of ourselves, oneself. I think this came in from what you had said earlier, that a defeat teaches us more. If you could just share with us how, because as you said, we attach victory and defeat with our own personal wealth or personal self, that we invest in it. It's the
See, if
same
you
thing about a college that we want to be in. It's about being a IIM graduate. It's about being an IIT. It's about going to a foreign university. We attach so much to these one shot that if you don't get this, your life is done. How do you tell a person that there is more to life?
Well, I'll ask all of you, how important are your class 10 board exam results today? Probably not important at all. How important are your class 12 board exam results? How important is your MBA scores? So when you look back in hindsight, those things really don't matter. But at the time, they dominated your existence, and that's natural. So like I said, this too shall pass. If you look at sportsmen when they've finished a match, sometimes when they've lost a match, you'll see there's no expression on their faces. And you wonder, doesn't this person get affected? He doesn't care. He's lost the game. India's lost the game. He doesn't care. Of course he cares. Of course she cares. They're trained to handle it, and they're trained to leave that defeat on the ground there. Because if you carry it with you, when you go to the next time, you would have already lost the match. How many of you have seen that movie, MS Dhoni, The Untold Story? What does Sushant Singh Rajput, God rest his soul, What does Sushant Singh Rajput's character say in the movie? Where did we lose the game? Not on the cricket field. We lost it on the basketball court when Yuvraj Singh walked past him. By the way, I asked Yuvraj, and of course, Yuvraj has no memory of this incident, but it must have happened. So, very often you've lost the game even before you come there. Do not carry your defeat from yesterday on to today, because that will impact today as well. And learn to separate your defeat and your victory from your sense of self-worth. The only truths in your life are your life's own experiences. Okay, maybe you came first in India in class 10 or class 12. Who cares, man? Nobody cares anymore. It doesn't define your life. And frankly, I was a good student. I was in the top 2 or 3, but I may have even come first once or twice. But once I started playing basketball, my grades slipped a little bit. I was typically in the top 5, but I would not give up that sport for anything, because I think it developed me in an overall fashion much better. And pardon my saying so, all the people who came first in my class, I don't know where they are today. I have no idea what jobs they're doing, where they are. They just disappeared. They're not on the school groups. They're not on the MBA groups. They're not on the college groups. Nobody seems to know where they went. So academic excellence is not the guarantee to success. Look at Mukesh Ambani. Look at Sachin Tendulkar. Look at Parvinder Singh, who started Ranbaxy. These people are not formally educated beyond. Or look at Dhirubhai Ambani. These people are not formally. Mark Zuckerberg is a Harvard dropout. Our own Prime Minister says, I believe more in hard work than in Harvard. So separate your victory and defeat from yourself. Do you know why we let defeat affect us? Because we let victory affect us.
Okay.
Do not focus on outcomes. Focus only on process. The outcome will happen on its own. Look at Mahendra Singh Dhoni's recent video where he's saying just focus on process. And frankly, if you lose, you will realize there was some deficiency in my process. तैयारी में कुछ खामी थी, मैंने कुछ कमी छोड़ दी. And frankly, sometimes if you've played extremely well and still lost, that is more satisfying than playing badly and winning.
The part where you said about that the process is so important, I think that's where the value of sports comes in. It's only when you can play for the fun of that game, being in that field, being in the zone is what is important. Whether you're losing or winning is something that happens that day. And here I need to share a particular lesson that I learned from my son, the younger one, in fact. He's all of 6. And last year they were playing a match with another team, which had kids slightly on the elder side. They were hammered 6-0. But when they left the field, I did not see them hanging their heads or feeling bad about it. And he said something which you just said. He told me, "Aaj strategy nahi chali. Next time we will be better prepared." And next time they met the same team in the semis and they hammered them 2-1. They had to change something. Thoda defense khelna pada, thoda offense khelna pada, thoda sa strategy change karni padi. But that is what you learn from sports. And I think that's the value here. Sports teaches you that not every game is going to be a win. Not every game is going to be a win. And that's why you have a person like Dhoni, who is a finisher. Because if the opening batsman is going to win every game, why do you need Dhoni? And that's where we...
You see, the thing is, Amit, also popular culture, media, everything celebrates outcome. Nobody celebrates process because it's boring. It's nose to the grindstone, it's repetitive. And if you ask all these professional sportsmen, they don't miss the gameplay and the matches as much. They miss the process and the preparation. Because they are playing only about 100 days in the year, or maybe 70, 80 days in the year. But they are preparing and practicing and training 300 days of the year. So they miss that much more than the gameplay. The gameplay is just a natural outcome of the practice and the process.
Yeah.
So when I asked Sachin, when I was at Pepsi and there was this big talk about Sachin Tendulkar, when will he retire? When will he retire? I asked him, I said, Sachin, everyone's asking you, when will you retire and stuff. So he says, man, when you're asking me, when will I retire? You're not asking me to retire. You're asking me to stop living. Cool. Because this is all I've ever done from the time I was 3 years old. So he said, this has been my life. It's not been a game. And actually, if you look at it, post-retiring, he's really struggled with finding purpose and cause for himself. What is he doing? He's not contributing to the BCCI. He's working for Reliance. He's working for Mumbai Indians, etc. But beyond that, I think Sachin has struggled to find purpose and cause for himself. Unlike Rahul Dravid, who's involved with the game, he's now chairman of the academy. He was under 19 coach. Unlike Saurav Ganguly, who's BCCI chairman and will probably become ICC chairman. And then unlike other players who are selectors and stuff like that, I truly hope that Dhoni continues to associate with the game. In fact, I wouldn't mind seeing a person like Dhoni as prime minister, frankly. I told him once. I told him, I think Ali, you'll make a great prime minister. When I asked him, I said, MSD, what do you think is the problem with India? And you know what he said, Amit? He said the problem with India is that there are too many directors and too few actors. Which is brilliant, which means that बोलने के लिए बहुत लोग हैं, करने के लिए बहुत कम है. So I think Shubham Agarwal has written, no one even celebrates failure, which is also to be accepted as an outcome. Absolutely. Failures should also be celebrated. Listen, only in India and to an extent in Southeast Asia is failure a bad word. Overseas, failure is not a bad word, because failure doesn't mean your credibility and your competence is in question. It could be a question of circumstances. It could be strategic difference. The famous example of Sergio Zeman, who was chief marketing officer at Coca-Cola globally, he came out with this new Coke, and it was a disaster, and he was sacked from his job. 10 years later, he was hired back once again as director of marketing, because they knew that they needed a fall guy, they needed a scapegoat. Obviously, it was not his decision alone. And they realized that his credibility and competence was not the issue. So keep your victory and defeat away from yourself. Focus only on process. Practice every day. Practice process. Listen, you mentioned that I'm a professional public speaker. I listen to my own speeches to see how I can improve. Even though I've been doing it for 40 years, I still believe I can improve. There's a famous story of a 93-year-old Gary Player, I think one of the famous golfers. At the age of 93, they asked him that, why do you still play the game? And he said, I'm beginning to notice some improvements. Which I thought was incredible. What a brilliant attitude to have.
We are coming to the close of the evening, guys. I will request more questions to come in. We have a substantial number of people who have written in. We had Vishal, Nishant, Vivek, Colonel Manish, Shubham obviously came in. Congratulations, Shubham. I think we'll be proud of the achievement when you do tell everyone about it. And Shubham is somebody, Samar sir, that I know. He's again a fighter. He's got that warrior spirit in him. And this gets me to a question before we get more on the chat board. What do you think about sacrifice? During the COVID crisis, people were called on to sacrifice a few privileges that they had. Don't go out. Don't be in a crowd. Maintain distance. Maintain a few precautions. But we realized that unless you shut down the entire country, we were just not willing to listen. So is it so difficult to sacrifice? And how do you create a mindset in which we are willing to do things which benefit everyone, not just one person?
I have a little extreme view on this. My view is that military training should be mandatory for every able-bodied person in this country, like Singapore and Israel. I think what we lack as a nation is discipline, for sure. For us, following the rules is infra-dig. It's not cool to follow the rules. My submission is, if you follow the rules, you have the moral upper hand, don't you? If you follow the rules, you have the moral upper hand. But for us, following the rules is not cool. It's not a sign of rebellion. So I think in Bangalore, where I live, Amit, I think the adherence to masks is literally 100%, at least in central Bangalore. However, social distancing is still, I think, genetically impossible in our country. So I'm saying, if you recognize that, then at least wear your masks all the time, and go out only if you absolutely have to. I think all this time has shown us how we can survive despite that. And like I told you, think about the First World War, the Second World War, the Spanish flu, the Great Depression. This is nothing compared to what it is. Even then, life found a way, and life will again find a way. You are at home. Most of us are, working from home. We have food, security, water, Wi-Fi, AC, Netflix. We have our loved ones around us more often than not. You have your friends that you can reach out to. Imagine if all this was taken away. Imagine if there were a war. And I mean, the gentleman who's on my right on the screen has seen many wars. Maybe one day he'll tell you about it. War is hell. Both sides lose. And this is a war of a different kind, but we are safe. We are grateful. Be grateful and thankful for being alive. That's what I have to say. And sacrifice is, what is the sacrifice we've been asked to make, frankly? Stay at home, wear masks, monitor your going out, etc. This is a small price to be paid.
PG is back in, and thank you, Samar. We had a terrific interaction, and more than that, I think Vivek is speaking for everyone when he says, "Thanks a lot for filling us with so much positive energy. Brilliant." I
Thank
think
you.
I could
Thank you.
say it better. Thank you, Vivek, for that. And for the close now, back to Preeti.
Thank you very much for that, Amit and Summer. Brilliant. Couple of takeaways for myself that I internalized while I was on the other side was a glass half full mentality, opportunities instead of obstacles, and a growth mindset. Those three things are my takeaways from this particular session. And if anybody wants to ask one last question, we have about 1 minute more. They can very well do that. But for the time being, yes, I totally agree with our friend Vivek Kalia, who says, thank you for the positivity. I think it's totally needed, and that is the need of the hour going forward. I think if all of us follow that one particular trait, we would be all right. And like you say, this too shall pass. Right. I guess we don't have. Oh yeah. Okay. So there's a couple more comments. Here is Shubham saying, "Count your blessings. The essential is not visible through the eye." Correct.
Aditya Singh
And
has said, yeah, Aditya Singh has said, I'm not so sure about the moral high ground. I made that comment in response to following the rules. I'm not sure why Aditya Singh is saying that. See, if I obey traffic laws, I have the moral high ground, don't I? If I pay my taxes, I have the moral high ground. If I don't jump a red light, I have the moral high ground. If I don't lie, cheat, or steal, I have the moral high ground. So I'm not, maybe you didn't understand it, but that's the context in which I mentioned it.
here is
Sacri-
Vani Power.
yeah,
She
sorry,
says
yeah.
sacrifices can be and usually self-appropriated, misplaced sense of entitlement. Who better than people from the forces teaching this to the civilians? Thank you very much for that, Shivani.
I
And
complete,
last
yeah,
but
I,
not,
yeah, completely agree. I've
sorry,
had three generations in the armed forces, so I know little about that.
yeah, absolutely. And here is Shikha Gupta says, it was indeed a great session, lots of insights, positive energy, and direction. Way to go. Thank you. And with that, I think we are on the right path to say thank you very much. Until the next one, take good care, stay safe, stay positive. Over to you. Bye.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Amit, and see you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very much.